Have you ever hit a goal you worked for years, built the business, created the income, earned the respect, and still had the uncomfortable feeling that you might be winning at the wrong thing?
Most people think wasting your life looks like drifting, doing nothing, or lacking ambition, but it doesn't. Sometimes it looks like discipline, momentum, and success aimed at a life you never consciously chose.
I'm Skye Swift, 8-figure entrepreneur, pharmacist, and transformation coach.
And I'm Christina McGrath, high-performance coach and elite wellness specialist.
Together, we help high-performing entrepreneurs and leaders dissolve internal resistance so they can operate with clarity, calm, and power.
In this episode, we're going to break down 3 invisible traps that keep people stuck winning the wrong game, give you the game plan to start realigning your success with the life you actually want.
Let's get into the first trap, keeping people from the life they want. 1, living someone else's definition of success.
And this was very true for you, wasn't it, for a little while? Or
yeah, well, like at the start,
Okay.
you know, I always wanted to be a pharmacist.
Yeah.
Fabulous. So I got there, but honestly, within weeks, I was like, now what? And so I was like, okay, I'll be maybe happier if I buy a pharmacy, if I'm making more money, if I'm managing stuff, if I'm learning new skills. And great, you know, that got me through again. But then it came back. It's like, and I was like, there's got to be more. And so when I learnt that the subconscious mind is running 95% of our life, when 95% of my daily choices are coming from childhood programs, things that I took on in childhood that I learnt then I was like, wow, that's why people in my pharmacy aren't healing as quick as they could. That's why people are suffering more than they could. And that's also why I wasn't as fulfilled, because I was living out a life that I didn't consciously choose.
so would you say you were living out a life that you thought society or thought would fulfill you?
I was living out a life what success meant to me, but I'd never stopped to think about it.
And what success meant to you was old programming, something that you actually got
Yeah.
from your family, from society, from the pressure of having to do more, be more.
And it's really interesting because it's got its pros and its cons. So because I had the drive and the lessons and the learnings from my parents and of that around me, and they had high standards, they were entrepreneurs, they were also pharmacists and business owners. So can you see there, right there,
love.
the transformation, that the programming is so strong. And there's that saying, give me a boy till he's 7 and I'll show you the man.
Ah, interesting. Yeah.
Because that's how strong the programming is at a young stage. So much so that in my family, 5 out of 6 of us are pharmacists. And so while I did consciously choose that at the age of 6, I consciously chose it based on all I knew. And guess what I knew? Guess who my world was when I was 6? My family.
Exactly.
And it was great because I wanted to help people. That's why I wanted it, actually. That was my first thing. I remember sitting on the dispensary in my dad's pharmacy, and 2 old ladies were like, Chris. And I was like, oh my goodness, he can help them with anything. And so from then on, I wanted to be a pharmacist, which is great.
Which, if you go back to it and even listening to the story, your internal drive was to help people.
Absolutely. And it still is. But now that I've learnt more, I now know more, and therefore I can do more that's more aligned with me. And so when I learned that the subconscious was running 95% of it, I was like, well, that's where all the stuff is. That's where the fears, doubts, triggers, and limitations are. And therefore, that's where all the freedom is. And so I learned that mental freedom is the ultimate, because from there you can still amass the success, you can have the achievements. We're not talking about slowing down here. We're just talking about now having such clarity for what I internally wanted, not just what I'd seen and conformed to growing up.
So again, we're kind of talking a little bit about the trap of living somebody else's definition of success, but paired with, so this is interesting because it can be a con, living somebody else's success or somebody else's version of success, but that also led you to a lot of
Good things.
Good things.
It's fascinating. And I was thinking a really important point that I want to bring up too is that when you're young, when I was young, people would say, what do you want to be when you're older? And like, I know that I've even asked my kids that, what do you want to be? So it's almost like you're instilling in children that there's one choice, one career path for them, and do they know what it is? And so as a pharmacist, I didn't know that I could change because, you know, it was good money, it was what I knew, and it was who I was. So then that became identity. So creating change there is actually really difficult, which is why it becomes a trap. Because I didn't know there was other options. And you don't know what you don't know.
And you don't know what you don't know. So you went, when you got that shift, and so the main shift of even realizing, and this is, I think, a really pivotal moment, is when you realize you were actually possibly living a little bit of somebody else's success.
Or their expectations.
Or their expectations in a familiar pattern. Then you had time to be like, okay, while this gave me a lot of financial security and all this amazing success that you actually have, you have the ability to come and be like, okay, this is great. Now,
it was great.
Now what?
But I wasn't fulfilled.
See, this is so interesting. So that is the trap.
That's the trap. Things were
living
great.
Somebody else's success. It's almost like it'll carry you for a long time. However, then you'll get to a point where you've actually achieved the goal, which I think we'll talk about pretty soon. You'll achieve the goal, and then it'll still feel like, wait,
yeah,
what was the point?
So on paper, I had everything that society ever told me that I could ever want or have.
Yeah.
I had the husband, the children, the business, like an amazing team. I have an amazing team in my pharmacies.
Actually, yeah.
And great friends. So
Yeah.
on paper, I had it all. But internally, I was just like, now what? Now what? And I was actually like that for a long time. So that's the interesting thing. While I really identified it and created a change in my 30s, even when I was at university, one of my boyfriends then, said to me, Skye, you're never content right now. You're always looking for the next thing. So that was a little tip off that if anyone at any stage is noticing that they're not content in the now, that's probably because they're not living in alignment with their true self, their truth path. And that's okay. But just be aware of it and start becoming discerning, start becoming aware of what interests you, what lights you up, where you can, create opportunities in a path that you love, as well as something, because we always talk the foundation is important.
Foundation is super important. And I also think the main thing that we're talking about is success. And so if you are successful, success means different things to different people. So to society, like you said, great on paper, all this kind of stuff, but fulfillment, which some would say is the real determination of success, right?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, well, we would definitely say that now. But that's not necessarily highlighted, even though I would think that most of our parents out there would be like, well, we would just want you to be happy.
Yeah, and they say that.
They say that. They're like, please go to university and make.
But they also care that you're financially
exactly
safe and secure, that you've got a foundation, and that's really important. So there's such a spectrum here.
Huge.
Because I even know the high-performing business owners and some hugely wealthy entrepreneurs that actually don't want to be fulfilled. They've said that. Because, why? Because without that fulfillment, they've still got drive.
They're operating under that kind of pressure.
Yeah, that pressure gives them more impetus to perform. And so my question there is, where are you performing from? Do you know what I mean?
And I think that's a real question, really.
Yeah. And in my experience with the work that we do, I definitely say there's a need to prove, to either yourself or often to a father figure, to tell you the truth, that you are enough. See me. I am worthy. I am capable. And so that can be quite a driver, and it can bring lots of external success.
Yeah, so living a life, obviously, since we're talking about the main thing of living a life full of worth, I guess you'd say. And if you're living for somebody else's success or to prove something, then it will eventually come to a point where you're going to look at yourself and be like, am I actually fulfilled, or am I following somebody else's path?
And the other scenario that I see too is also rebelling from their childhood experience.
The opposite.
The opposite. So you had that experience and the programming
That's an interesting one as well.
didn't, become who you were. It actually became who you were determined not to be.
Yeah.
So again, a great success can come from that, but I'd still say that's an external thing. If you're coming from a need to prove to yourself or others or rebel, that's an external scenario.
Pressure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so again, a trap. Anything external is always interesting because you'll know it's external if you don't find internal fulfillment or if your nervous system isn't calm and peaceful or, as I like to say, organized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, a lot of people don't realize that they've inherited their definition of success. And so the second trap leading to a life that can feel wasted is actually optimizing the vehicle but ignoring the destination. This feels like doing, but not actually being.
And so this can lead to a lot of chronic stress.
Absolutely. Because especially with entrepreneurs, they're so good at biohacking, productivity, building the business, working on the teams. But if they're not actually stopping to ask, is this a life that I want to be creating?
Yeah. Do you lose connection with yourself?
Absolutely.
Because you're always operating externally.
Yeah. And that can be stressful, unfulfilling, which I've experienced in my life. And it can build a business. So I think some of the reason that this happens is because a lot of people don't actually know what they want. They just know what they don't want.
Yeah.
And so they only know that because of whatever they've experienced. Yeah, that's their reference point. So until we clear the programs and then make everything possible,
then they can understand what they actually want.
People are existing from their programs, therefore they don't know what else is available.
So if you're optimizing the vehicle, you're always it's almost like the keeping up with the Joneses.
It's like being on autopilot.
It's being on autopilot and not realizing what you really want. And so when you tap into the internal and then you actually start realizing what you want and productivity doesn't become, and success doesn't become the driving factor, it's actually being happy and being fulfilled becomes the driving factor. Like you said, they know what they don't want, but they don't know what they do want.
Yeah, so they just keep going with the flow,
Yeah.
keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
But it's not actually satisfying. And so what we always encourage people to do and what we do ourselves is we feel into what doesn't feel good for us. We get to learn and we actually acknowledge what we don't want, but then we clear the limitations there. We literally clear at the subconscious level of mind the limitations, the limiting belief, the fear of stepping into what we actually want, any doubts that we have. And when you clear the conditioning, in my experience, I've had so much clarity in my mind that I can literally feel.
Exactly. And I think one of the biggest things too that I've loved is, and with clients I've done this as well, it's like your definition of success changes when you change your aspect, and it's no longer initiated by an outward or an external programming that you've had before. Your internal version of success changes. And I have people actually going over new definitions of success, whether it be experiences, adventures, how they want to feel, connections. So I think when you change from really reactive to the external pressure forces of society and success, and then you look inside and you're like, actually, what I really want is connection. What I really want is adventure. What I really want is nature. What I really want is to optimize my performance as an athlete. Whatever it is, if it's coming from truly from you, it becomes a lot stronger, and your definitions shift, and they could change all the time as well. Yeah. It's funny because the definition outwardly of success, you'll know it's an outward mirror, I guess, is if it's the same all the time. Because I find that people shift during different phases of their life, different versions of success almost.
Okay.
Which I think is actually fascinating.
Yeah. So you're saying that if people have an outward version, then their outward
It's kind of like
life.
the outward version is the house, the beautiful family, the millions of dollars, the very successful business. And then as you shift internally, be like, actually, I've always wanted to travel. I've always wanted freedom, which actually can sometimes mean less work, stronger connections, a different vision of the future. And then you also can shift into that and be like, okay, I'm going to do all of that. And then a different version of success comes in where it's like, oh, now I've learned all this stuff. Now I want to innovate. And now I want to be an artist. And now I want to do this. It's like, oh, sweet. It's like you shift experiences because you're not so limited anymore.
And I love the way you've described that, because it's not something you can actually convince someone into.
No.
Someone who's driven by external goals and validation and things can't be talked into the fact that the greatest depth is internal. You literally have to engage in a program or be ready for it and experience the internal change before you notice what's really available
100%.
and what's already here.
It's not a strategy. It's not another habit. It's becoming internally aware.
Exactly.
So
And
I think that's the power in this one.
And that's how you can avoid the trap
The trap.
of optimizing the vehicle and forgetting the destination. You can actually do both.
Yeah.
Which is what we love.
Which is what we love.
And number three trap, which is wasting life insidiously, is deferring the life you actually want.
Waiting.
I'll be happy when.
I love that. I'll slow down when.
I'll relax when.
Yeah.
I love this one because what I say to people or what I think is, no, you won't. Because like we always say.
That's strong.
You won't. Because you don't know how. You don't know how. And how you attain something is how you maintain it.
Yeah.
One of your favorite sayings. And so you won't actually slow down. Some people think that some people have a monetary number that they want to reach, and then it doesn't happen. I've seen it time and time again. I've seen people get to that place. They don't know any different.
Okay, so I'm going to just agree and disagree with this one
Okay.
a little bit, just because if that does come from an internal state, which if it came from an internal state, it's not a trap. However, it comes from an external state of always waiting for the goal to appear in order to feel the feeling, then I agree with that.
Okay.
But I also do agree if you have a huge goal and it's aligned, this is the key, with your values, then that aligned goal can produce a little bit of a feeling of internal success.
Yeah. Yeah.
The trap would be if the goal is what you're waiting for. So one of our greatest sayings too is enjoy the journey. So you've got to enjoy the journey on the way to the goal. So that's another thing as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and I wonder if this changes throughout the people's age as well, because I have a friend who's in his 20s, and he's already making over $1 million, and it's so funny. He's so driven. He watches business people, and he said, "Skye, I have everything I thought I wanted." And he's like, "But I'm not internally fulfilled." He's like, "Is it worth it? My connections aren't that strong. I'm working 7 days a week." And so it's fascinating because, even young people can be experiencing this one as well. And so again, you will get taken wherever you're meant to go and to your next step. And it doesn't matter what age you are, it's worth taking the time to inquire within and say, is this the life I want to be living? Because what I've learned is that if you're always waiting for the when you get there, it's satisfying momentarily if you haven't done the internal work.
Or if you haven't enjoyed the journey.
Especially if you haven't enjoyed the journey. And so the real reason that high achievers often defer their lives is because they're in that survival state or the fight or flight, or they're just like, it's a habit. They're just so used to the grind.
Familiarity.
Yeah, exactly. And I always like to bring a little bit of science into it, being a pharmacist.
Love it.
And so in our brain, the reticular activating system is literally looking for evidence of what we focus on, whether it's wanted or not. And so when you're a high achieving business owner, growing the business is a thing. So you have to delay the holidays because you want to keep winning, scaling, growing. And again, like the electromagnetic field, when our thoughts and emotions actually emit frequency. So we will be around whatever it is that we're an emotional or frequency vibration of. So I always like to bring that. But, how can people avoid this trap of waiting, deferring?
And I think we've subtly hit on that by aligning that big goal with values, which are internal. And then also,
that's what's important to you.
That's what's important
what you
to you.
love.
And then also waking up every day, enjoying the journey. Because regardless of if you hit it or not, all we have is today.
Exactly.
So all we have is presence.
Yeah. And I didn't enjoy the journey earlier on. I enjoyed it. It was fine, but it was just fine. It was, Groundhog Day like, and I was just going through emotions. So I actually had to draw a line in the sand.
Yeah.
Because I was actually looking forward to either retreats or even a hospital stay so I could just do nothing.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So that's another step.
Yep.
Draw a line in the sand. Take time to go inward and go, is this the life I want to be living? Or am I just wasting that? And what do we know about entrepreneurs and wasting their potential?
It is not on the top of the list.
Yeah, exactly right. So bringing this together, you don't actually waste your life by being lazy. It's by going with a flow that you didn't choose. When you're living someone else's definition of success, when you're deferring something that you really love, that's what leads to emptiness on the inside and wasting life. And there's nothing more crushing than not living up to your full potential.
And if you want to learn more about working with us, click the link below.